My name is Ray Anderson, and I just turned 32 last month. As a software developer in Seattle, I never thought my biggest financial decision this year would be dropping $10,200 on my parents' backyard renovation. They were so excited when I offered. That all changed with one phone call from my aunt. Her words still echo in my head. "Oh, by the way, the party is just immediate family. Hope you understand." Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. Hit that like button and subscribe if you have ever had family take advantage of your generosity. Trust me, what happened next changed everything. I grew up in a middle-class neighborhood in Portland. My parents, Thomas and Karen Anderson, worked hard to provide a comfortable life for me and my younger sister, Jenna. Dad was an insurance adjuster, and Mom taught third grade at the local elementary school. We never had luxury vacations or brand new cars, but we never went without the essentials either. Our house was modest but well-maintained, a 3-bedroom ranch-style home with a yard that was always neatly trimmed but nothing special. From an early age, I showed an aptitude for computers and technology. While my parents encouraged my interests, they never fully understood them. When I talked about coding or new software developments, they would smile and nod, but their eyes would glaze over. It was different with Jenna. Her talent for art and design was something tangible they could appreciate and proudly display. Her paintings hung in the living room, while my coding achievements remained abstract concepts. College was a struggle financially. I attended Oregon State University on a partial scholarship, but had to take out substantial student loans and work part-time jobs to make ends meet. My parents helped when they could, but their resources were limited, especially after they started paying for Jenna's art school tuition. I never resented this. It made sense that the money they had went to offset the higher cost of her specialized education. I was good at finding scholarships and work opportunities. After graduating with my computer science degree, I struggled initially, bouncing between entry-level positions that barely covered my loan payments and rent. The breakthrough came when I was 26. I landed a job at a growing tech company in Seattle, developing back-end systems for their cloud services. Within 2 years, I had been promoted twice, and my salary had more than doubled. By 28, I was financially secure for the first time in my life. That's when the dynamic with my parents began to shift. It started small. During a weekend visit home, Dad mentioned their car was having transmission problems. The repair bill was going to be $4,000, more than they had available. Without hesitation, I offered to cover it. The relief and gratitude on their faces made the money seem insignificant. A few months later, Mom needed dental work, not covered by insurance. Again, I stepped in. These incidents became a pattern. House repairs, medical bills, a new refrigerator when theirs died suddenly. Each time, I never hesitated to help. I was making good money, had minimal expenses besides my apartment, and was still putting away decent savings. Why wouldn't I help the people who had raised me? Each time I assisted financially, I felt a warmth of approval from them that I had seldom experienced growing up. Jenna, now 29, and working as a graphic designer in Portland, remained the emotional favorite. She was included in all family decisions, called for advice, and consulted on everything from vacation plans to what color to paint the living room. Meanwhile, I was the financial safety net, appreciated but somehow separate. My sister never seemed to contribute financially to family needs, though I never pointed this out. Uncle Paul, my father's brother, was the only one who ever raised concerns about the arrangement. During a Thanksgiving dinner 3 years ago, he pulled me aside while I was helping with dishes. "Ray, you're a good son," he said, his voice low. "But be careful about becoming an ATM for your parents. It can change relationships in ways you don't expect." I brushed off his concern. These were my parents, not opportunists. Besides, what was the point of my success if I couldn't share it with family? Aunt Susan, my mother's sister, was a different story entirely. Married to Brian, a successful commercial real estate developer, she had cultivated a lifestyle focused on appearances and social status. Their house in Lake Oswego was featured in a regional home magazine, and she never missed an opportunity to mention their vacation property in Scottsdale or their son's prestigious law school. Family gatherings often included subtle comparisons between me and my cousin Trevor, who worked at his father's company. The fact that I made significantly more money than him never seemed to factor into these comparisons. 3 months ago, I received news of a substantial promotion and bonus at work. Lead developer with a 30% salary increase and a performance bonus of $15,000. That weekend, I drove down to Portland to share the news with my parents. We had dinner at their house, nothing fancy, just Mom's lasagna and a bottle of wine I had brought. Midway through dinner, Mom mentioned casually how she'd always wanted to properly landscape their backyard. It would be so nice to have a space where we could entertain in the summer, she said, looking wistfully out the sliding glass door to the basic concrete patio and patchy lawn beyond. I always see these beautiful outdoor living spaces in magazines, with fire pits and nice seating areas. Dad nodded in agreement. Maybe when we retire in a few years. Though by then, well, probably be too old to enjoy it much. I could see the genuine longing in my mother's eyes. This wasn't like the practical needs I'd helped with before. This was a dream, a luxury they would likely never prioritize for themselves. Without overthinking it, I made the offer. What if we did it now? I asked. I just got this bonus, and I was going to put most of it toward investments anyway. Why not use some of it to create that backyard space for you guys? The shock and joy on their faces was immediate. Mom actually teared up, and Dad, not normally demonstrative, reached over and squeezed my shoulder hard. Son, that's incredibly generous, he said, his voice gruff with emotion, but it's too much. I waved away his concern. Look, I've been fortunate. Let me do this for you both. You deserve a beautiful space to enjoy. That night, as we sat at the kitchen table with notepads, roughly sketching ideas, I felt a closeness to my parents I hadn't experienced in years. Mom envisioned a covered seating area with a fire pit, while Dad got excited about the possibility of an outdoor cooking space. I added suggestions about landscaping and lighting. It felt collaborative and joyful, like we were building something meaningful together. When I left that Sunday, I had promised to research contractors and set up some consultations. The excitement stayed with me during the 3-hour drive back to Seattle. For once, I wasn't just the financial provider. I was a full participant in creating something that would bring lasting enjoyment to my family. This wasn't a necessary repair or an emergency expense. This was a gift that would transform their daily lives. I had no idea that this gift would end up transforming my life as well, just not in the way I had imagined. The following weekend, I drove back to Portland with a list of reputable landscaping contractors. I had researched extensively, reading reviews and checking credentials. This project needed to be done right. We scheduled appointments with 3 different companies for Saturday. The first contractor, a large company with slick brochures, seemed more interested in upselling features than listening to our actual needs. The second was reasonably priced, but had limited experience with the kind of comprehensive outdoor living space we envisioned. The third, Lucas Peterson of Peterson Landscaping, immediately clicked with us. Lucas was in his 40s, with calloused hands and an obvious passion for his work. He listened carefully to our ideas, asked thoughtful questions about how the space would be used, and made practical suggestions that enhanced our initial vision. He brought a portfolio showing similar projects his team had completed. Over coffee at the kitchen table, Lucas sketched a preliminary design that incorporated everything we wanted: a covered patio area with comfortable seating, a stone fire pit surrounded by built-in benches, an outdoor kitchen with a grill station, and beautiful landscaping to tie it all together. He suggested adding ambient lighting for evening gatherings and a small water feature that would create a peaceful atmosphere. My mother was practically glowing as she looked at the sketch. "It's perfect," she said. "I can already imagine summer evenings out there." When Lucas provided a cost breakdown, the total came to just over $15,000. It was more than I had initially planned, but the enthusiasm on my parents' faces made it hard to consider scaling back. After some discussion, we decided to move forward with most of the plan but delay the water feature to a potential phase 2. The final budget we agreed upon was $13,800. I immediately wrote a check for $3,600 as the deposit, with the remainder to be paid in installments as work progressed. Of that total, my contribution would be $10,200. My parents insisted on covering the difference of $3,600 themselves. That same day, Lucas and I walked through the existing yard space, discussing specific placement of features and addressing potential challenges like drainage and sun exposure. I found myself genuinely excited about the technical aspects of the project, and Lucas seemed to appreciate my interest and input. To accommodate this significant expense, I had to postpone my own plans to renovate my kitchen in Seattle. It was a sacrifice I made willingly, believing this gift to my parents would strengthen our relationship and create a space for future family memories. Work began 2 weeks later. I took a day off to be present when the crew arrived for the initial demolition and site preparation. The old concrete patio was broken up and removed, the patchy lawn cleared, and the ground prepared for the new features. Lucas and his 3-person crew worked efficiently, and by the end of that first day, the transformation had already begun. I established a pattern of driving down every weekend to check on progress. Each visit, I would bring coffee and donuts for the crew on Saturday mornings. Lucas would walk me through what had been accomplished and what was coming next. I became friendly with his team Miguel, the stonework specialist, James, who handled the carpentry, and Diego, who managed the plantings and irrigation. My parents' enthusiasm remained high, but I began noticing subtle changes in their approach to the project. During the 3rd week, when the stone fire pit was being installed, Mom asked if we could upgrade the stones to a more expensive variety she had seen in a magazine. Dad wondered if the covered patio could be extended by a few feet. I accommodated these changes, knowing they would add to the cost, but wanting the space to be exactly what they desired. Each modification required additional materials and labor, slowly pushing the budget upward. I approved these changes without complaint, transferring more money to cover the expenses. One Saturday afternoon, while helping Lucas measure for the outdoor kitchen countertops, I overheard my mother on the phone in the kitchen. "Yes, Susan," she was saying, her voice animated. "It's going to be absolutely gorgeous. The Millers next door won't believe the transformation. And wait until you see the outdoor kitchen. It's going to put your patio to shame." I felt a flicker of discomfort at her competitive tone, so different from the genuine joy she had expressed initially, but I brushed it aside. Mom was excited, and if part of that excitement included a bit of neighborly one-upmanship, was that really so bad? A week later, I arrived to find a delivery truck outside the house. 2 men were unloading expensive-looking outdoor furniture rattan, seating with plush cushions, a large dining table with 8 chairs, and several decorative planters. I hadn't been consulted about this purchase. When I asked my father about it, he seemed slightly embarrassed. "Your mother found it all on sale," he explained. "We dipped into our savings a bit, but she felt it was important to have the right furniture to complete the space. The furniture was beautiful and would certainly complement the work being done. But something about the situation left me uneasy. The furniture had clearly been expensive, even on sale. If they had several $1,000s available for furniture, why had my financial contribution been necessary at all? During my 6th weekend visit, I offered to help Dad clean out the garage to make room for the old patio furniture that would be displaced by the new set. While sorting through some boxes, I came across a folder labeled Backyard Project. Curious, I flipped it open. Inside were printouts of emails between my mother and a party rental company. The correspondence discussed tent rentals, catering options, and serving staff for an event in late July, just after the projected completion date for the backyard. There was a preliminary guest list attached, with over 50 names. I was confused. No one had mentioned plans for such a large gathering. I casually brought it up while having lunch with Dad later that day. "So, looks like you and Mom are planning quite an event for the new backyard," I said, keeping my tone light. Dad seemed momentarily startled, then shrugged. "Oh, your mother has some ideas. Nothing definite yet." His evasive response only increased my confusion, but I didn't press the issue. Perhaps they wanted the party to be a surprise, with me as a guest of honor to thank me for my contribution. That would explain the secrecy. The following week, I received a text from my cousin Tyler, Aunt Susan's son. "Dude, excited for the big party next month. Mom says it's going to be epic. Open bar?" I stared at the message, unsure how to respond. Tyler knew more about this party than I did. I replied casually, still figuring out the details. "What's your mom told you about it?" His response was immediate. "Just that Aunt Karen and Uncle Thomas are having this huge backyard reveal party after the renovation. Mom's been talking about it nonstop. Something about important people coming. Thought you were involved in the planning since you're paying for the reno." I set my phone down slowly. Important people? This was becoming stranger by the minute. That evening, I called my parents, intending to directly ask about these party plans. Mom answered, sounding distracted. "Ray, honey, can I call you back? We're just heading out to meet with the caterer." "Caterer?" I echoed. "For the party?" A brief pause. "Oh, just preliminary discussions. Nothing set in stone yet. I'll call tomorrow, okay?" She hung up before I could ask more questions. I tried calling back several times over the next few days, but my calls went to voicemail. I sent text messages asking about the party, but received only vague responses about being busy with backyard decisions. I was beginning to feel deliberately excluded, which made no sense given my significant financial contribution to the project. The confusion and unease grew, but I tried to give my parents the benefit of the doubt. Perhaps they were just overwhelmed with planning and would fill me in soon. I had no idea that the truth would come from an entirely unexpected source, and that it would shatter my understanding of my place in my family. The call came on a Tuesday evening. I was sitting in my apartment, reviewing code for a project deadline, when my phone rang. The screen displayed Aunt Susan, an unusual occurrence since she rarely contacted me directly. "Ray, darling," her voice came through with that familiar, affected warmth. "How are you?" I made small talk briefly, wondering about the purpose of her call. Aunt Susan was never one for casual check-ins. "I was just talking with your mother about the backyard project," she continued. "It's coming along beautifully. The photos Karen sent me look absolutely magazine-worthy." "Yes, the team is doing great work," I replied. "I'm glad Mom is happy with it." "She should be, with the investment you've made. So generous of you." There was a pause. Then she continued in a slightly different tone. "Anyway, I was calling about the party. Karen mentioned there might be some confusion." My attention sharpened. "What confusion?" "Well, she wasn't sure if she had made the guest list clear to you. The reveal party is planned for immediate family only. You know how these things go: small, intimate gathering to celebrate the new space." I frowned. Tyler mentioned something about a big party with a lot of guests. A slight laugh. "Oh, that's just Tyler exaggerating. You know how he is." There was another pause, longer this time. "Though, I should mention that immediate family will include a few others. Brian and I are bringing the Harrisons. You remember Jack and Linda? Brian's partners in the Phoenix development? And the Wilsons will be there too." Something cold settled in my stomach. I had met these people exactly once, at a holiday party years ago. They were business connections, not family. "And that's immediate family?" I asked, unable to keep the edge from my voice. "Well, Karen thought it would be a good opportunity for networking. Jack and Linda's daughter is graduating with an engineering degree soon. Might be a good connection for you professionally." The pieces were starting to align in a pattern I didn't want to recognize. "So when is this immediate family gathering happening?" I asked. "July 28th, she replied. "The Saturday after completion. You will be able to make it, won't you?" "I haven't actually received an invitation," I said slowly. "Oh." There was genuine surprise in her voice. "Well, I'm sure it's coming. Karen has been so busy with all the planning. Oh, by the way, the party is just immediate family. Hope you understand." The familiar phrase from my story hook finally made its appearance. The calculated casualness of her tone made it clear this was a deliberate message she had been tasked to deliver. "I need to check my calendar," I managed to say. "I'll get back to you." After ending the call, I immediately tried calling both my parents. No answer. I sent text messages asking directly about the party. No response. I even called Jenna, but got her voicemail. An hour later, I received a single text from my father. "Don't be dramatic. It's just easier this way." Just easier? What way? I texted back immediately. No response came that night, or the next morning. The silence was becoming its own form of answer. That evening, I received an email from Lucas with updated photos of the backyard progress. The transformation was remarkable. The covered patio was nearly complete, the fire pit area was finished, and the outdoor kitchen was taking shape. Under normal circumstances, I would have felt proud and excited. Instead, I felt a growing sense of being used. Out of curiosity, I checked my sister's Instagram account. She rarely posted, but her most recent update caught my eye. It was a photo of an elegantly designed invitation card. "Celebrating our new outdoor oasis," it read. The date matched what Aunt Susan had mentioned. The card included details about dress code cocktail casual and RSVP information. I zoomed in on the photo and could make out part of a guest list in the background. It was far longer than what would constitute immediate family by any definition. I recognized names of my parents, neighbors, my mother's, colleagues from the school, and several people from my father's office. Trying one last approach, I called Uncle Paul. Unlike the others, he answered immediately. "Ray," he said, his voice concerned. "I was going to call you tonight." "Uncle Paul, what's going on with this backyard party?" I asked directly. He sighed heavily. "I was afraid of this. Look, Ray, your mother has turned this into something different from what you probably intended. Susan got involved, and you know how she is. It's become this networking event for her and Brian's business contacts. I told your father it wasn't right, especially given your contribution. But I appreciate your honesty," I said, my voice tight. "So I paid for this renovation, but am not considered immediate family for the reveal party?" "It's worse than that," Paul admitted reluctantly. "From what I understand, the reason you're not formally invited is that Susan convinced your mother that well, your job isn't impressive enough for the guest list she's curated. They're positioning this as a high-end networking event, and apparently having a software developer nephew doesn't fit the narrative Susan wants to present." The truth hit me like a physical blow. Not impressive enough? I was a lead developer at a respected tech company, making a six-figure salary that had funded this entire project. "But Janice invited?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "Yes. As an artist and designer, she's considered more, I don't know, prestigious in Susan's circles. I'm sorry, Ray. I've tried talking sense into Thomas, but Karen and Susan have him convinced this is some important social opportunity they can't miss." After thanking Uncle Paul for his honesty, I sat in stunned silence in my apartment. The betrayal was complete and devastating. I had contributed over $10,000 to create a space where I wasn't welcome to celebrate. My own mother had decided my career wasn't sufficiently impressive for her social climbing purposes, despite being funded by that very career. I opened social media and found more evidence. My mother had joined several upscale home design groups and was posting progress photos of the backyard with captions like, "Preparing for our exclusive summer soiree," and creating the perfect entertainment space for special guests. In the comments, she responded to questions about the designer and cost without once mentioning my contribution. As the night progressed, my hurt crystallized into something harder. I had been a financial resource to be tapped, not a son to be included. The pattern I had dismissed for years suddenly became clear. I wasn't part of the family inner circle. I was the family bank. Remembering the payment schedule for the project, I realized the final major payments were due that week. The landscaping crew was scheduled to begin the final phase, planting the specialty trees and installing the irrigation system that would complete the transformation. In that moment, I made a decision that would change everything. Sleep didn't come easily that night. I tossed and turned, replaying years of interactions with my family through this new lens. How many times had my generosity been taken for granted? How often had my contributions been accepted without genuine appreciation or inclusion? At 3 in the morning, I called my best friend Marcus. We had been roommates in college, and he knew my family dynamics better than anyone. "Dude, it's the middle of the night," he answered groggily. "They excluded me from the party," I said without preamble. "The backyard that I paid for. They're having some fancy networking event, and decided I'm not impressive enough to attend." Marcus was fully awake now. "Are you serious?" I laid out the whole situation while he listened silently. "Ray," he finally said, "I'm going to say something you're not going to like. This isn't new behavior. Your parents have been treating you like an ATM for years. The difference is that now it's so blatant you can't ignore it anymore." His words stung because they contained truth I had been avoiding. "Remember when they needed a new roof?" he continued. "They called you immediately, not Jenna. Remember when they remodeled their kitchen last year? Somehow they found half the money themselves, but still needed your help for the rest. But when they celebrated the completion, Jenna was in all the photos they posted, and you were barely mentioned." I hadn't connected these dots before, but Marcus was right. There was a clear pattern. "The question is," he said, "what are you going to do about it now?" "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me wants to confront them directly. Part of me wants to just walk away. And part of me wants to hit them where it hurts." Marcus finished for me. "Their precious backyard project?" I didn't answer immediately. The thought had already formed, but saying it aloud would make it real. "Look," Marcus continued, "whatever you decide, I support you. But remember that actions have consequences. Think about what outcome you actually want here." After we hung up, I spent the remaining early morning hours researching my options. The remaining funds for the project were scheduled in 2 parts. The next day, a payment of $4,600 was due to Lucas for materials and labor for the outdoor kitchen completion. The following week, the final $2,000 would be due for the landscaping and irrigation system. I had made these payments by direct deposit into the contractor's account for previous installments. The money was still in my account, not yet transferred. Legally, I had no obligation to complete these payments. The agreement had been informal, between family members, with no contracts signed. The arrangements with Lucas were in my parents' names, though they had provided my banking information for the payments. Around 6 in the morning, I called my financial advisor, waking her early as well. "Janet, I need some advice about withdrawing a promised gift," I said after apologizing for the hour. She listened to the situation thoughtfully. "From a purely financial and legal perspective, you're under no obligation to complete these payments," she confirmed. "Gift promises are generally not legally enforceable without specific documentation. However," she added, "you should consider the relationship consequences. Family financial disputes can have lasting repercussions." I thanked her for the input, then made one more call to a lawyer friend who specialized in contract law. He confirmed Janet's assessment and added that I might want to document my reasoning for withdrawing the funds in case there was any later dispute. As the morning progressed, I continued to wait for any communication from my parents. Nothing came. No explanation, no apology, not even an attempt to justify their decision. Just silence, and my father's dismissive text from the night before. "Don't be dramatic. It's just easier this way." That phrase kept echoing in my mind. Easier for whom? Easier to take my money but exclude me from the celebration? Easier to avoid acknowledging the inconsistency in their treatment? The final straw came just before noon. I received an email that had clearly been sent to me by mistake. It was from my mother to Aunt Susan, with the subject line, "Backyard Reveal Guest List Final." "Susan," she had written, "I've attached the final guest list and seating chart. I took your advice and seated the Wilsons near Brian, where they can discuss the lakeside project. The caterers confirmed the premium package, and the servers will be in formal attire as you suggested. Ray sent over the final payment for the kitchen area today, so everything is on track financially. So excited for this to come together. The neighborhood will be talking about this for months. There it was in black and white. I was good for the money, but not good enough for a seat at the table. Something shifted inside me in that moment. The hurt was still there, but now it was accompanied by a cold clarity. I had been allowing this dynamic to continue, enabling their behavior by responding to every financial request without setting boundaries. I opened my banking app and canceled the scheduled payment to Lucas' account. Then I called my bank and placed a hold on any further transactions to that account number. Finally, I sent an email to Lucas explaining that due to a family situation, I would no longer be funding the remaining portions of the project. I apologized for any inconvenience and made it clear that this was not a reflection on his excellent work, but rather a personal matter between me and my parents. With each action, I felt a strange mixture of guilt, anxiety, and something unexpected empowerment. For the first time, I was setting a boundary with my family about my financial support. It wasn't about the money itself, but about the respect and consideration that had been absent. I sent one final text to my father. The backyard payments have been canceled. When you're ready to discuss why, let me know. Then I turned off notifications from my family members and went for a long walk. I needed space to process what I had done and prepare for the inevitable fallout. Part of me still wondered if I was overreacting, if I should have just accepted my role as financial provider without expectation of proper inclusion. But as I walked through my Seattle neighborhood, watching families in parks and gathering for weekend activities, I realized that relationships should be reciprocal. Love, respect, and inclusion shouldn't be conditional based on social status or career prestige. By the time I returned to my apartment, a strange calm had settled over me. Whatever came next, I had taken a stand for my own self-respect. The money wasn't the point, it was the principle of being valued for who I was, not just what I could provide. As I made dinner that evening, I felt occasional pangs of doubt. My parents would be hurt and angry. The project they had been excited about was now in jeopardy. The social event they had planned would be compromised. But then I remembered my father's dismissive text. Don't be dramatic. As if my feelings about being excluded were simply an overreaction, an inconvenience to their plans. I wasn't being dramatic now. I was simply establishing that my contribution came with the basic expectation of respect and inclusion. If they couldn't provide that, then they would need to fund their social climbing backyard themselves. As I went to bed that night, I turned my phone back on long enough to set an alarm. The screen immediately lit up with missed call notifications and text messages. I ignored them all and went to sleep, knowing that tomorrow would bring the real confrontation. For now, I had made my stand. The next move would be theirs. The sound of my alarm pulled me from a surprisingly deep sleep. For a moment, in the haze between dreaming and waking, everything was normal. Then reality crashed back in as I checked my phone. 39 missed calls, 23 voicemails, 48 text messages. The missed calls were primarily from my parents, with my mother's name appearing 20 times, my father's 12. Jenna had called 3 times, Aunt Susan twice, and Uncle Paul twice. The timestamp on the first call showed it had come just 30 minutes after my text to my father about canceling the payments. The voicemails followed a predictable progression. The first, from my father, was short and commanding. Ray, call me immediately. There's been some misunderstanding with the contractor payments. My mother's first message was similarly controlled, though with an undercurrent of panic. Ray, honey, the bank says there was a problem with the transfer. We need to sort this out right away. Call us. As the timestamps progressed, the tone changed dramatically. My father became angry. This is completely unacceptable behavior. You made a commitment. Call me now. My mother became emotional. Ray, please, I don't understand what's happening. Lucas called saying the payment was canceled. We're supposed to have the party in 3 weeks. Everything will be ruined if we don't finish on time. Please call me back. Aunt Susan left a particularly telling message. Ray, I don't know what game you're playing, but you're embarrassing the family. Your mother has invited very important people to this event, and your little tantrum is putting all her hard work at risk. Grow up and fulfill your obligations." The text messages told a similar story, from confusion to anger to guilt-tripping. My sister Jenna's texts were the most measured. "Ray, what's going on? Mom and Dad are freaking out. Did something happen with your finances?" Then later, "They told me about the party situation. I had no idea you weren't formally invited. That's really messed up. But cutting off the funding now puts everyone in a bad position." I took a deep breath and put the phone down without responding to any of the messages. I needed coffee and clarity before engaging with this storm. As I moved around my kitchen preparing breakfast, I felt strangely calm. The decision had been made, and now I just needed to stand firm in it. A hard knock at my apartment door startled me. I wasn't expecting anyone, especially not at 7:30 in the morning. Looking through the peephole, I saw my mother standing in the hallway, her face tight with anger and distress. I could hear her calling my name through the door, her voice rising with each repetition. Rather than open it immediately, I took a moment to prepare myself. This confrontation needed to happen, but I wanted it to be on my terms. The knocking became more insistent. "Ray, I know you're in there. Open this door right now." I stood silently, letting her continue for a full minute. My neighbors would certainly hear, but that was her choice, not mine. When her voice finally cracked with emotion, I unlocked and opened the door. Mom stood there, her hand raised to knock again, looking both furious and somehow smaller than I remembered. Her normally perfect hair was hastily pulled back, and she wore no makeup, a rarity for her. "What are you doing?" she demanded, pushing past me into the apartment. "Have you lost your mind? Lucas called us yesterday saying you emailed him to withdraw funding. The kitchen counters are being delivered today." I closed the door quietly and turned to face her. "Hello, Mom. I didn't realize you were coming to Seattle today. Don't play games with me," she snapped. "What is going on? Your father had to call in sick to work today because we're trying to figure out how to salvage this disaster you've created." I walked calmly to my coffee maker and poured 2 cups, offering one to her. She ignored it. "I was surprised to learn about the big party you're planning," I said evenly. "The one where I'm not invited because my job isn't impressive enough for Aunt Susan's business connections." Her face flushed, but she recovered quickly. "Is that what this childish behavior is about? A misunderstanding about the guest list?" "Is it a misunderstanding?" I asked. "Because from what I've gathered, you've planned an exclusive networking event in the backyard I funded, and deliberately excluded me, because a software developer doesn't fit the upscale image you're trying to project." She paced the small living room. "You're completely misinterpreting the situation. It's a small family gathering with a few additional guests. We didn't think you'd want to make the drive down for something so casual." I set down my coffee cup. "Mom, I have seen the invitation. I've seen your emails about the guest list and seating chart. I've talked to Uncle Paul. And I've seen your social media posts about your exclusive summer soiree. Don't insult my intelligence by lying to me now." Her strategy shifted instantly. "Well, what did you expect?" she demanded. "That we'd throw money away on this renovation without getting some social benefit from it? The Wilsons have connections that could really help your father at work. The Harrisons' daughter is looking for job opportunities. This is important for our future." "And am not important to that future?" I asked quietly. "Except as the checkbook?" "That's not fair," she protested, but I could see in her eyes that she'd been caught. "Ray, you've always been so practical about these things. We thought you'd understand the value of making these connections." My phone rang. I glanced at it long enough to see my father's name, then put it on speaker. "Ray?" My father's voice came through, tense and loud. "Is your mother there?" "I'm here, Thomas," she called back. Hess being completely unreasonable. "Put me on video," he demanded. I did, holding the phone where he could see both of us. My father's face appeared on screen, red with anger. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" he demanded. "We have contractors showing up today expecting to be paid. We have materials being delivered. The landscaping team is scheduled for Monday. I know, I replied calmly. I funded the first 70% of this project because I wanted to do something nice for you both. I thought I was creating a space where family could gather and make memories together. When I discovered that I wasn't welcome at the first event in that space because my career is somehow embarrassing to you, I decided my money wasn't welcome either. This isn't about the damn party, he exploded. This is about you making a commitment and then childishly backing out because your feelings are hurt. No, Dad, I countered. This is about respect. This is about being valued as your son, not just as your personal ATM. For years, I've been the one you call when there's a bill to pay or an expense you can't cover. I've never hesitated to help. But I draw the line at funding a space where I'm not welcome. The doorbell rang again. I excused myself to answer it, finding my sister Jenna standing there, looking harried. She must have flown up from Portland first thing this morning. Thank God, Mom said when Jenna entered. Talk some sense into your brother. Jenna looked between us uncertainly. Can someone please explain what's actually happening here? The story keeps changing. Your brother is holding the backyard hostage because he wasn't invited to some party, my mother said dismissively. That's not accurate, I said. I'm withdrawing financial support for a project where my contribution has been taken for granted and my presence deemed inconvenient. My phone rang again. Aunt Susan. I answered on speaker. Raymond. She began without greeting. Your behavior is absolutely appalling. Do you have any idea the position you've put your parents in? They've invited very important people to this event, and now everything is falling apart. I wonder whose fault that is, I replied calmly. Perhaps the person who suggested I shouldn't be invited to enjoy the space I paid for? A shocked silence followed. Then, is that what this tantrum is about, not being included in the guest list? For heaven's sake, Raymond, grow up. Sometimes adults make strategic social decisions. This event could open important doors for your family. Just not for me, apparently, I replied. Since my career is such an embarrassment. Jenna was staring at our mother with growing dismay. Mom, you excluded Ray from the party? In the backyard he paid for? My mother waved dismissively. He was going to be invited to the family gathering the following weekend. This is just a small networking event that Susan is helping coordinate. So small it needs professional caterers, formal servers, and a seating chart? I asked. The email you accidentally sent me yesterday made it pretty clear what kind of event this is. A tense silence filled the room. On the phone screen, my father ran a hand over his face. Look, he finally said, voice calmer but still stern. Whatever miscommunication happened here, the fact remains that we have financial obligations to meet today. The contractor needs to be paid. Materials need to be accepted. Can we deal with the family issues later and address the immediate problem? The immediate problem is that you don't see this as a family issue, I replied. You're separating the money from the relationship, which is exactly how we've been operating for years. I'm not doing that anymore. The conversation continued in circles for another hour. My mother alternated between anger, tears, and attempts at rationalization. My father remained focused on the practical problem of the missing funds. Jenna tried to mediate, genuinely shocked by how it had been excluded, but also concerned about the immediate financial situation. Aunt Susan called twice more, each time more indignant than the last. During her final call, she played her trump card. I hope you're satisfied, Raymond. Your parents are going to have to withdraw $5,000 from their retirement account to cover these expenses. Is that what you wanted? To force them to compromise their future? Their retirement account? I echoed, looking directly at my mother. The same retirement account that supposedly couldn't cover a new refrigerator last year? Or the roof repair the year before? My mother had the grace to look away. That's when Uncle Paul called. Unlike the others, his approach was measured. Ray, he began, I understand why you're upset. What they did was wrong. But I think everyone needs some space to cool down and consider next steps. Would you be open to a family meeting this weekend? No decisions. Just honest conversation. His reasonable tone was such a contrast to the emotional manipulation of the others that I found myself agreeing. We set a tentative time for Saturday at my parents' house, where we could literally see the results of the situation in the half-finished backyard. As my mother and sister prepared to leave, I maintained my position. The funds would not be released without a genuine acknowledgement of the issue and a commitment to change the family dynamic. This wasn't about money, it was about respect. After they left, I sat in my suddenly quiet apartment, emotionally drained but oddly at peace. For the first time, I had stood up for myself in this family dynamic. Whatever came next, that step couldn't be undone. The drive to Portland that Saturday morning felt different from all previous trips. Instead of anticipation or filial duty, I felt a strange combination of dread and determination. Marcus had offered to come with me, and his presence in the passenger seat was reassuring. "Won't your parents be upset that I came along?" he asked as we neared the city limits. "Probably," I replied, "but I'm done making decisions based solely on their comfort." When we arrived at the house, several cars already lined the driveway. I recognized Uncle Paul's sensible sedan, Aunt Susan's luxury SUV, and my sister's compact hybrid. Marcus and I had to park on the street. The tension was palpable the moment we entered. My mother looked stricken at the sight of Marcus, while my father merely tightened his lips in disapproval. Aunt Susan made no attempt to hide her irritation. "I wasn't aware this was an open meeting," she remarked coldly. "Marcus is here as my support," I replied simply. "If you have business associates present, I don't see why I can't have a friend." Uncle Paul stepped forward, extending a hand to Marcus. "Nice to see you again," he said, diffusing some of the initial hostility. "I've ordered sandwiches for lunch, since this might take a while. Shall we start in the living room?" My mother shook her head. "No, we should sit in the backyard. Ray should see exactly what his actions have caused." I nodded, accepting this transparent attempt to guilt me. We moved through the house to the back door, which opened onto what was clearly a project in limbo. The covered patio structure was complete, but empty of furniture. The fire pit area was finished, but had construction materials stacked nearby. The outdoor kitchen area was half-assembled, with countertop materials still in protective wrapping, leaning against the exterior wall. The ground beyond was torn up, with irrigation trenches dug, but no landscaping installed. My parents had set up the old patio furniture the backyard renovation was meant to replace. We arranged ourselves awkwardly, with Marcus and me on one side, my parents and Jenna on another, and Aunt Susan and Uncle Paul completing the circle. For a moment no one spoke. Then my father cleared his throat. "The contractors have put the project on hold," he said, his voice carefully controlled. "They've been professional about it, but they won't continue without payment. The landscape team has canceled entirely and moved on to other projects." I nodded but said nothing. "Your actions have cost us considerably," he continued. "Not just financially, but in terms of relationships with vendors, neighbors we've had to inform about the delay, and yes, guests who were planning to attend an event here." I noticed he still wouldn't directly acknowledge the nature of that event, or my exclusion from it. Uncle Paul leaned forward. "I think we need to start by addressing the core issue," he said. "Ray feels excluded and undervalued by his family, particularly in relation to a significant financial contribution he made. That needs to be acknowledged before we can move forward." My mother made a dismissive gesture. "This has been blown completely out of proportion. It was a simple misunderstanding about a guest list." "Was it?" I finally spoke. "Because from what I've gathered, the decision to exclude me was quite deliberate." "I'd like to hear the honest reason, without excuses or minimizing." Aunt Susan snorted. "If we're being honest, the party has specific social objectives. The guest list was curated for maximum benefit to the family." "Benefit to which family members?" I asked pointedly. She straightened in her chair. "Raymond, your attitude is precisely why these decisions were made. Some of us understand social niceties and strategic networking. Your sister, for instance, knows how to present herself appropriately in these circles." Jenna looked uncomfortable. "Susan, that's not fair. Ray is successful and accomplished. There's no reason he shouldn't have been included." "A tech job is all well and good," Aunt Susan continued, as if Jenna hadn't spoken. But Brian's associates are from a different world. They wouldn't find much to discuss with someone who sits at a computer all day. The blunt statement hung in the air. No one, not even my parents, rushed to contradict her assessment. I see, I said quietly. So my contribution was welcome, but my presence would have been embarrassing. My mother finally spoke, her voice strained. It wasn't like that, we just thought. It made sense to have an event focused on your father's industry connections. We were going to include you in the family gathering afterward. The family gathering that wasn't mentioned in any of your planning documents, I pointed out. The one that suddenly appeared as a justification after I discovered I was excluded. My father slammed his hand on the table, making everyone jump. Enough of this sensitivity. You made a commitment to fund this project. You can't just withdraw because your feelings are hurt about a party guest list. Marcus, who had been silent until now, spoke up. Mr. Anderson, with all due respect, gift promises aren't legally binding without specific documentation. Ray was making a gift to his family, not entering a contract. My father turned his glare to Marcus. This is a family matter. You shouldn't even be here. I'm here because Ray asked me to be, Marcus replied calmly. And from what I've seen, he needed someone in his corner. Uncle Paul raised his hands. Let's all take a breath. We're getting off track. Aunt Susan wasn't finished. The real issue here is that Raymond is using his financial leverage to punish his parents for a perceived slight. It's childish and vindictive. I turned to face her directly. This isn't about punishment. It's about recognizing a pattern that's been going on for years. I'm valued for my checkbook, not as a family member. This situation just made it impossible to ignore any longer. My mother began to protest, but I continued. Tell me honestly, when was the last time you called me just to talk? When did you last ask about my life, my work, my interests? But the moment there's a bill to pay, or an expense you can't cover, I'm the first person you contact. A heavy silence followed. My father looked away, and my mother stared at her hands. Jenna broke the silence unexpectedly. Hez right, she said quietly. I never noticed it before, but it's true. Ray gets called for financial emergencies. I get called for everything else. My mother looked up, betrayal in her eyes. That's not true, Jenna. We call Ray all the time. For what, Mom? Jenna pressed. When was the last conversation that wasn't about money or something you needed him to fix? Before my mother could answer, the doorbell rang. She excused herself, seemingly relieved by the interruption. She returned moments later, looking flustered. It's the neighbors, the Millers. They want to know if they're still invited to the party next weekend. What should I tell them? Aunt Susan stood up. This is exactly the kind of embarrassment I've been concerned about. Karen and Thomas had to inform over 40 guests that the event has been postponed indefinitely. Do you have any idea of the social cost? Something in her wording caught my attention. 40 guests? I asked. For an immediate family gathering? My mother at least had the grace to look embarrassed. Well, we had expanded the list somewhat. I took out my phone, pulled up the email Shed accidentally sent me, and read aloud. Susan, I've attached the final guest list and seating chart. I took your advice and seated the Wilsons near Brian, where they can discuss the Lakeside project. I looked up. The Lakeside project? Is that the development Uncle Brian has been trying to get funding for? The tension in the air shifted. Aunt Susan sat down slowly, and my father suddenly seemed very interested in the half-built fire pit. Uncle Paul let out a long breath. Oh, for God's sake. This wasn't just a social gathering, was it? This was a business meeting, disguised as a family event. My aunt lifted her chin defiantly. There is nothing wrong with using social occasions for business purposes. It's how the world works. And you were using my parents' new backyard paid for largely by me to host potential investors for Brian's project, I said, the final piece clicking into place. A project I wasn't deemed impressive enough to be included in discussions about. The silence that followed confirmed my suspicion. My mother looked trapped, my father uncomfortable, and my aunt calculating. Jenna stood up abruptly. This is unbelievable. You excluded Ray from an event in a space he paid for so you could use that space to seek investments for Uncle Brian's project? And you wonder why he's upset? Susan, what is she talking about? Uncle Paul demanded. My aunt waved dismissively. Brian mentioned the project to Thomas, who expressed interest in potentially investing some of their retirement savings. I suggested that meeting some of the other investors in a casual setting might help them make an informed decision. My father wouldn't meet my eyes. Another piece fell into place. So the retirement account that supposedly couldn't cover home repairs or appliances might have been tapped for Uncle Brian's development? The same account Mom mentioned having to withdraw from to cover the remaining backyard costs? The confrontation that followed was painful, but necessary. As the full extent of the situation became clear, divisions formed within the family. Uncle Paul was clearly disgusted by the manipulation. Jenna was hurt and angry on my behalf. My parents were caught between embarrassment and defensive justification. After nearly 2 hours of heated discussion, I finally spoke the words I'd come to say. I have terms for restoring the funding, I said, my voice steady. First, a genuine acknowledgement of how inappropriate this situation was. Second, a commitment to change the nature of our relationship moving forward. Not a bank you can withdraw from at will. Your son, and I deserve the same respect and inclusion you give to Jenna or anyone else in this family. The terms seem reasonable to me, Uncle Paul said. My mother looked torn. The money is important, but this isn't just about the backyard anymore, is it? No, I replied. It's about whether we have a relationship based on mutual respect or one based on what I can provide for you. My father finally spoke directly to me. What exactly do you want from us, Ray? I want what any son wants, I answered. To be valued for who I am, not what I can give you. To be included rather than conveniently forgotten when it doesn't serve your purposes. To have parents who take an interest in my life beyond my bank account. The meeting ended without a firm resolution. My parents needed time to consider my terms. Aunt Susan left in a huff, unwilling to acknowledge any wrongdoing. Uncle Paul and Jenna both expressed support for my position, recognizing the pattern that had developed over the years. As Marcus and I prepared to leave, my mother pulled me aside. Ray, she said hesitantly, I don't want to lose you over this. It was the first genuine moment we'd had since the conflict began. I looked at her directly. Then, stop treating me like a resource instead of a son, I replied. The choice is yours. Walking away from the half-finished backyard that day, I felt a mix of sadness and strength. The family was fractured, but perhaps that was necessary for it to heal properly. I'd set a boundary that couldn't be ignored or minimized. What happened next would depend on whether my family could recognize and respect that boundary. 3 months passed before the backyard was completed. In the end, my parents scaled back the project significantly, using their own funds to finish the essential elements. The elaborate outdoor kitchen became a simple grill station. The extensive landscaping was reduced to basic plantings and sod. The covered patio remained, but with more modest furniture than originally planned. During those 3 months, I embarked on my own healing journey. The confrontation had exposed not just a single incident of exclusion, but a long-established pattern in our family dynamics. With the help of a therapist specializing in family relationships, I began to understand how I'd allowed myself to be cast in the role of financial provider while accepting emotional scraps in return. Dr. Landon, my therapist, helped me see how my desire for parental approval had made me vulnerable to manipulation. We always give them money when they ask because it makes them happy with you for a while, she observed during our 3rd session. Have you considered what would happen if you said no occasionally? It had been a revealing question. I realized I had never said no to a financial request from my parents, afraid of losing the brief moments of approval that followed each contribution. I maintained limited contact with my family during this period. Short phone calls, primarily focused on practical matters. I declined 2 invitations to drive down to Portland, not yet ready to re-enter the physical space where everything had come to a head. Meanwhile, my personal life began to flourish in unexpected ways. Without the constant drain of family financial emergencies, I finally renovated my own kitchen, a project I'd postponed multiple times to accommodate my parents' needs. I joined a local hiking group, spending weekends exploring the beautiful trails around Seattle, rather than driving to Portland to check on my parents' project. I also began dating someone, Claire, who demonstrated what healthy boundaries looked like in a relationship. She was a graphic designer I'd met through a mutual friend, someone who showed genuine interest in my work and passions. When I eventually told her about the family situation, her response was refreshingly straightforward. "They treated you like an ATM, not a son," she said. "Standing up for yourself wasn't selfish, it was necessary." Her clarity helped reinforce the difficult stand I'd taken. The first significant step toward reconciliation came from an unexpected source, my sister, Jenna. She called one evening in early October. "The backyard is done," she said without preamble. "It's nothing like the original plan, but it's functional. Mom and Dad are having a small gathering next weekend. Just family, real family this time. They asked me to call and see if you'd consider coming." Her emphasis on real family caught my attention. "Who's invited?" I asked cautiously. "You, me, Uncle Paul, and Aunt Maria, Mom and Dad. That's it," she replied. "Aunt Susan and Uncle Brian aren't included." This deliberate exclusion of the catalysts for the original conflict seemed significant. When I hesitated, Jenna added, "Things have been different since everything happened. Mom actually talks about you now, not just to you when they need something. I think they're trying, Ray, in their own way." After discussing it with Dr. Landon and Claire, I decided to attend. Claire offered to accompany me, but I felt this was a journey I needed to make alone. The 3-hour drive to Portland gave me plenty of time to prepare mentally for whatever might await. The house looked the same from the outside, but something felt different as I walked up the familiar driveway. My father answered the door, his expression a careful neutral. "Thank you for coming," he said, more formal than our usual greeting. "We appreciate it." The backyard, visible through the sliding glass doors, was indeed transformed, though not in the elaborate way originally planned. The covered patio held a simple outdoor dining set. The fire pit area was completed with basic stone work. The plantings were young but healthy. It was pleasant and functional, without the showiness of the original design. Uncle Paul greeted me warmly, while my mother hovered uncertainly in the background. Jenna gave me a quick hug and whispered, "They really are trying." Dinner was served at the outdoor table, a simple meal prepared by my mother. The conversation was initially stilted, carefully avoiding any mention of the conflict that had brought us to this point. Uncle Paul carried much of the discussion, asking about my work and life in Seattle with genuine interest. It wasn't until we gathered around the fire pit after dinner that my mother finally addressed the elephant in the room. "The backyard turned out nice," she said, looking around at the space. "Not what we originally planned, but maybe better in some ways, more honest." I nodded, acknowledging the metaphor embedded in her statement. "We owe you an apology, Ray," she continued, her voice uncharacteristically vulnerable. "What we did was wrong, using your generosity while excluding you from the benefits. It was shameful." My father cleared his throat. "We've had a lot of time to think about how we've treated you over the years, taking your financial help for granted, not giving you the same emotional investment we gave to Jenna." Her words in the driveway that day, about who we call and why we were hard to hear but true. I felt a tightness in my chest, not quite believing what I was hearing. Uncle Paul nodded encouragingly. "They mean it, Ray. We've had many conversations about this over the past months." My mother reached for my hand hesitantly. "We're trying to understand how we fell into such destructive patterns. I think maybe it was because you were always so capable, so independent. We assumed you didn't need us the way Jenna did. But everyone needs to be valued and included." The simple acknowledgement of this basic truth almost undid me. For years, I'd told myself it didn't matter, that my financial success compensated for the emotional distance. Hearing my mother recognize the imbalance made all the hurt I had suppressed rise to the surface. "What about Aunt Susan?" I asked, trying to maintain composure. "We haven't spoken much since everything happened," my father admitted. She still thinks you overreacted. But we've realized her influence in our lives hasn't always been positive. She encouraged us to see you as a resource, rather than as our son. We let social climbing become more important than family, my mother added quietly. I'm ashamed of that now. As the evening continued, we began to establish a new framework for our relationship. I made it clear that I would still help in genuine emergencies, but routine financial assistance would no longer be the foundation of our interactions. More importantly, I expected to be included in family events and treated with the same consideration given to other family members. My parents listened and agreed. I couldn't know if the changes would last, but their willingness to acknowledge the problem seemed like an essential first step. Before I left that evening, my mother hugged me tightly. "I'm sorry we made you feel less valued than your checkbook," she whispered. "You're our son, and we love you. We're going to do better at showing that." In the months that followed, our relationship slowly evolved. The frequency of calls increased, but the nature changed dramatically. My mother would call just to share neighborhood news or ask about my day. My father started sending links to articles about software development that he thought might interest me, making an effort to connect with my world. I maintained firm boundaries around financial assistance, suggesting alternative solutions when money issues arose. Sometimes this created tension, but I remained resolute. The pattern could only change if both sides committed to different behaviors. My relationship with Jenna deepened as well. Without the imbalance of parental attention, creating subtle competition between us, we discovered common interests and perspectives Wed never explored. She confessed that Shed always envied my financial independence, while I admitted envying her easy emotional connection with our parents. Aunt Susan remained distant, unwilling to acknowledge any wrongdoing in the situation. Uncle Brian's lakeside project eventually failed to secure adequate funding, a fact that brought me no joy, but did confirm the wisdom of keeping my parents' retirement savings out of it. Through this difficult journey, I learned lessons that extended far beyond family dynamics. I discovered that generosity without boundaries isn't really generosity. It's a transaction where one side pays with money and the other with fleeting approval. True relationships require mutual respect and consideration, not just exchange of resources. I learned that standing up for yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary for authentic connections. By allowing myself to be treated as a financial resource first and a son second, I had been complicit in a dysfunctional pattern that ultimately served no one well. Perhaps most importantly, I learned that while money can buy a backyard renovation, it can't purchase genuine inclusion or respect. Those must be freely given, based on recognition of inherent worth rather than practical utility. Today, as I navigate all my relationships with these lessons in mind, I find myself more grounded and authentic. My boundaries are clearer, my expectations more reasonable, and my self-respect non-negotiable. The pain of that confrontation was necessary for growth, like pruning a plant to allow for healthier new growth. Family relationships are complex, filled with history and expectation. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do is disrupt unhealthy patterns, even when that disruption causes temporary pain. In the end, standing firm in my self-worth created space for a more balanced and genuine connection with my family, one based on who we are to each other, not what we can provide. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members who took you for granted? Comment below and share your experience. How did you handle it, and what was the outcome? Remember to like this video if you found my story helpful. Subscribe for more real-life lessons and share with someone who might be struggling with similar family dynamics. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember that your worth isn't measured by what you provide to others, but by who you are as a person.